So if you need a large print version and you want to follow along, we're going to ask that you do that because we do have an interactive activity and you may want to be able to see that in a larger version. Let's see if we can forward this. Keep it going. Or maybe not. Oh, they're trying to make it full screen. There it goes. Or they're still reading the bit.ly. Why don't you introduce yourself, Lindsay, while we're waiting? And there's the slide that introduces ourselves.
Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. I am Lindsay Morris. I am currently a learning experience designer at Baylor University. I know Lindsay here from work that we did together at Tarrant County College. So we'll talk a little bit more about that on an upcoming slide. But my roles right now primarily include developing graduate online courses with faculty at Baylor.
And I'm Lindsay Foster, or Lindsay Nichols Foster. I'm an instructional designer for accessibility. When Lindsay Morris and I worked together at Tarrant County College at the Connect campus, which is the fully online distance learning campus of the Tarrant County College district in Tarrant County, Fort Worth area of the Metroplex. She actually had the job that I have now. I was a general instructional designer and I was like her backup. And when she left to Baylor, I stepped into the role. And my job is primarily to assist our faculty and staff. We have approximately 600 adjuncts, and I believe we're at 48 full-time faculty and about 85 staff members in providing accessible digital products to our stakeholders, primarily our students, making sure that our courses, as well as anything that we send out, is accessible to students. So today we're going to explain how we got here, explain why organizations might want to consider creating personas, explain one way that we've come up with to create personas. You guys are going to get an opportunity to practice creating personas. We're going to have a discussion. So those of you in the room that are on the left, on my left-hand side, the stage right, may want to shift to a table to make friends, because we're going to ask you to do that later on. Offer some caveats about and some warnings about creating personas, and then we're going to wrap up the session. But hopefully this is a little bit of fun for you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about how do we get here, and why do we want to create personas? So I know we kind of talked a little bit about our background yesterday, but we both come from a K-12 background. And when we got into higher education and we started working with faculty one-on-one, one of the things that we kept hearing over and over again was, I've never had a student that, or I never will have a student that. And so there was a disconnect from what they think that they have in their classroom and who actually is showing up in their classroom. So the benefit of having that K-12 background is that we come from where every day modifications, accommodations, meeting IEP plan goals, 504 goals, that's a part of our everyday lives. And so we automatically think, what can we be doing to help all of our students? So we brought that in and really tried to focus on creating the student-first environment, especially because it is an online-only campus, and some of these faculty members are only teaching online. They might not ever see a student's face, especially if the course doesn't have any kind of synchronous online component. It's all behind Canvas, and if they don't put their icon, their face on that picture, you might not have any idea who that student truly is. So one of the major projects that we started working on together was the campus accessibility roadmap. And that was truly the goal, is putting a face to that name on the other side of the screen. So why create a persona? And it truly is just to help with the I never have had a student that type situations. The goal of creating these personas is to help scaffold the UDL design process for our faculty and truly give them someone to think about. When we talk to faculty, one of the things that we say is that we're not going to be fully prepared for every single possible situation that could happen. But in the design process, we can think about potential situations so that we can be as prepared as possible to be ready to serve all of our students.
Right. So how can we create personas? This is one of those things. It really is helpful to think about how do you create them. So we went to business and industry and actually curated some of their steps to create a persona. So those of you in the room, or those of you in our virtual audience who are in business and industry, this is going to make a little bit more sense to you. Those of you who are in education or government, you may have to tweak the process a little bit, massage it a little bit to make it fit your situation. But the first step that they recommend is that you research your stakeholders. Think about those people who are impacted, those end users at the end of your product. And I know that the presentations previously have discussed a lot about that end user experience. So, in that process, you're going to understand their needs. You're going to ask them, understand what they want, and understand what their pain points are. And that's something that when Lindsay and I were initially working on, we affectionately call it the CAR, our Campus Accessibility Roadmap. When we were working on the CAR initiative, we firmly believed and brought in, when we were talking about the human aspect of it, bringing in stakeholder students and students who were directly impacted by the work that we were doing with accessibility. And we asked them what their pain points were, which if you look to the, on the left of the slide, you'll see a graphic that says TCC Voices of Accessibility, and it has a background of our TCC district campuses, along with some students representing various and sundry disabilities that may appear on our campus, some of which are visible and some of which are not. And because we went to talk to our stakeholders, this side project as part of our Campus Accessibility Roadmap branched off, and we have the Voices of Accessibility project. That is an opportunity for our stakeholders to come and share their experiences in a variety of formats. They can record a video. We actually have a video production studio where they can come in and record their story. They can send their story in a written format and do a voiceover themselves, or they can ask that someone else voice over the work for them if they prefer to not have their voice and picture associated with their story, or they can just submit their story anonymously. We have filmed 2 stories so far. We have 5 in production that our students, faculty, and staff have all had an opportunity to participate and share their experiences at our institution. And they get to share the positives as well as the negatives. And we're turning those into visual stories that we can share with our faculty so that they can actually have a face to those individuals that their work might be impacting, the emails they're sending, the communications they're putting out, or the courses they're developing. So we took those things, did needs, wants, and pain points. And then you're going to take those things and make stakeholder segments, group them into smaller groups, find common points, use a Venn diagram if you have to, and look for those common intersections. Develop a persona for every stakeholder segment. Now, there may be individuals that are in several personas that are represented by that. You may have stakeholders, you may have to develop more stakeholder personas because you may have fewer intersections. It's okay that you not group people into large lumped categories. We obviously don't want to homogenize disability. We want to be specific, but if you can group people and find commonalities and make a persona, you can do that. And then you're going to use your personas to guide your program development. Now, we are going to give you some caveats about that later, but it helps our faculty, at least when we were working with them, if we could give them a person to think about when they were designing, because they were like, well, I don't have that issue. That doesn't apply to me. So I don't need to, it didn't even occur to me to think of that. And so by giving them a person that they might think about, whether that person actually exists, and the people that we're going to give you today do not, they are imaginary individuals with curated disabilities. It just gave them something to think about. And then the other thing you want to be aware of is updating your personas on a regular basis. Frequently, my institution, I have a campus president who loves our graphics department. And when I introduced the concept of personas to him, he jumped up on the idea of having giant cardboard cutouts made that we could stick in meetings. And then we would have faces of these individuals that we could program for. And I said, sir, I don't want to crush your enthusiasm. I think that's great. But we don't want that cardboard cutout that we haul out every time we're going to do this, every quarterly meeting. We want these are our students. And what happens with our students? We want them to matriculate through our program and eventually move on. I'm in a 2-year institution. We don't want them to stay here forever. We need them to move forward. So our personas should grow and matriculate and maybe graduate our program, and then we should get new personas. And he liked that idea. He still wants cardboard cutouts, but I'm trying to talk about that. And then you might, there's the consideration of using orthogonal personas with disabilities, OPDs. That particular article is hyperlinked for you, the orthogonal persona with disabilities. We have already folded that into our personas, but we added that step to these steps because that was not originally in the steps where we curated this information. So I wanted to be sure that we drew that for you. And Lindsay's going to talk about our persona, but it's not advancing. There we go. Oh. There it goes.
Okay, so we're going to talk about how are we going to create these personas, also known as our audience analysis. So the first thing that we're going to think about is what does this persona need? And think about what is their motivation? What does this persona already know or have? So what is the background knowledge? What are they coming into this learning experience with? What type of persona is this? What are the characteristics and demographics of the persona? And then what's their name? We're going to give our personas names because like we've said, the idea is to put a face to a name and humanize the person on the other side of the computer screen. So to kind of sum this up, we're going to put all of these things together and our persona is going to look something like this. Name is a characteristic or demographic who needs motivation because of our understanding. So let's actually put this all together. And if you're on the slides, in the slide notes, we do give a link to an article. So if you want to go in and read further about how we put this together and this formula that we're using, there we go. There is a link to an article there, so you can read further on that. So if you haven't noticed yet, clue me in as our presentation. And so we're going to pull in some clue characters today. And Lindsay did a lot of research, and I didn't know that there were different clue characters from around the world. So I think we'll have some new clue character names as we get going today. So our first persona is Mr. Body. His characteristics are that he's a male, he's 52 years old, and we know that he had frequent ear infections as a child, resulting in hearing loss. And we also know that he has a blue and yellow color deficiency. So we're going to take all of this information and put that together to create our persona.
Assuming that it advances. There it goes. Oop.
There we go. Okay. So here's our persona. Mr. Body is a 52-year-old male who needs captions and transcripts for media and alternative color notation because he is hard of hearing and has a blue-yellow color deficiency.
So you can kind of see what we've done is this is the description that we could give a faculty member to say, this is a student in your class. This is an end user that you might be working with. These are needs that he has. Take a look at your class, and is your class designed for Mr. Body? Are you using lots of blue and yellow? Do you have captions in your video? Are they correct? Are they accurate? Those kinds of things. And I would like to note, Lindsay reminded me to point this out. All of the character images that you see, Mr. Body happens to be wearing a black and white pinstripe suit. He has a mustache. He's got silvery gray hair. and I would say piercing blue eyes with a red and blue tie, and he's holding a cane. I'm not sure if he needs the cane or if he's just using that as an affectation. All of the images were generated using AI with a cartoon graphic novel theme. So you will find that they all do have alt text description if you want to read that and you have access to that. But we all use these AI. So these are not actual photographs, nor are they characters that we generated. Some of them may be kind of funny to you, but I did not bring cardboard cutouts of them. I'm so sorry. I didn't have time to have those made.
I mean, we didn't fly. We should have put some in the back of the car.
Yeah. We'll have to, that's an improvement for next time. All right. So we have these personas. So what we're going to ask you to do is at your tables or in the slide deck, you should have a persona practice. We printed out some printouts and Lindsay handed them out during the break to the folks in the room.
I kind of put them face down. So if you're like looking around,
you're like, where are the papers? Yeah. So we printed out some printouts so that you'd have some to look at. Those of you who are in our virtual audience, again, you're going to have that slide deck. If you haven't opened it, we've reposted the bit.ly/24 OK Tech Access with the OK, T, and A all capitalized. So what you're going to do is we're going to give you about 15 minutes. We've created some personas for you, and we're going to ask you to practice making those persona summary sentences. You don't have to follow our formula. If you would prefer to do something else, that's okay. And then you're going to try to make one of your own with details in a summary sentence. We have hyperlinked in the slide deck the Job Accommodation Network, which has a fairly comprehensive list of various and sundry disabilities and challenges that individuals may have. And I use that to help create these particular personas. So you're going to see some interesting choices. We had a couple of people who attended this session at Accessing Higher Ground in November, and they will see some new personas that we've added that weren't here before. So we're going to give you about 15 minutes to work as a group. If you choose to work independently, that's okay. And Lindsay and I will be available. If you have questions, just raise your hand. And I'm going to count on the folks in the back. If there are questions in the breakout rooms, they're going to put you in breakout rooms. They'll hail us and we'll come answer those, and they can answer the breakout questions for you. Okay? Thumbs up if we understand. All right. So here is where the audience participation, you're going to notice that there's a discussion that's coming. We're going to go through each of these personas, and we would love for the virtual groups to share. So we're going to watch the back and see how the virtual groups are what they're suggesting. But Lindsay and I are going to take turns reading the descriptions of these various personas, and Lindsay's going to bring the mic around to the room. And if your table would like to share what you thought, how you would address this particular persona and what you would provide this person, raise your hand and Lindsay will bring a mic to you, or maybe one of the other Tech Access Oklahoma staff will run a mic around the room and we'll get that. Oh, Peyton's got one. Okay. So this is Ms. Marmalade. She is a female who is 58 years old, and she has mild to moderate arthritis that can impact her ability to operate a keyboard or a mouse. She has progressive low vision due to macular degeneration, and the picture accompanying this is an Asian American with silver gray hair. She's wearing an orange sweater. She has an orange background and some sort of foofy purse pet dog. I don't know what kind of dog that is. Lindsay's the one with a veterinary background. So what will we do for Ms. Marmalade? Anybody? Oh, we got a table over here in the back on the left.
We'll go.
And tell us your name for the online audience.
Hello, everyone, including the online audience. Sorry for that loud beginning. Okay, so we have Miss Marmalade is a 58-year-old female who needs the tracking mouse because she has arthritis and needs a screen reader due to low vision caused by macular degeneration.
So they're recommending a tracking mouse and a screen reader. Anybody else come up with a different solution or an alternative for her? This is a room full of people with assistive technology. Oh, we got one over here at this table. It looks like maybe over there.
We also said that she might need some ergonomic keyboards and mouse, as well as possibly like one of those magnifiers for handout materials.
Excellent. So ergonomic keyboard and magnification. Great. And Lindsay, I think you have this table to our right.
I think that like a lighting assessment needs to be done.
A lighting assessment. Excellent. She may need more lighting or less lighting. That's great.
From chat, we have also having like a wrist rest and mouse pad with a wrist cushion, or ebooks that can be enlarged, large font books, or a screen reader. Excellent. So lots of solutions. And one more.
We had a similar deal for the impact ability to operate keyboard or mouse, speech to text.
Speech to text. So we heard lots of different solutions. Different tables came up with different solutions. And the virtual people, awesome. All right, so let's take a look at the next one. So we have Colonel Mustard. He is a male 38-year-old who has moderate hearing loss due to his military service, which you can see in his lovely yellow service uniform. And his left arm mobility is limited due to some work-related injury. And to describe the picture that appears for you, this is a possibly Hispanic male with salt and pepper gray hair, wearing a yellow military uniform with a green hat. I'm sorry, he sort of reminds me of a young Colonel Manuel Noriega. Is what I thought of when it generated this, but I didn't do that on purpose. Okay, so what does Colonel Mustard need? Up here in the front table.
So my name is Caitlin, and we did Colonel Mustard, and we thought he would need some note-taking software, as well as video captions for whenever he's watching videos.
Note-taking software and video captions. Okay. Any other tables come up with any other solutions? Our virtual groups come up with any other solutions for him? I see finger waving in the back. So.
All right. Chat says transcripts and closed captions, or Bluetooth capable hearing aids to match with his day-to-day tech, such as his phone.
Ooh, Bluetooth hearing aids. That's a new solution that we haven't heard yet. Fantastic. Like Peyton's coming over.
We noticed that due to his left arm mobility, he might have trouble typing on a keyboard. So speech to text might be a good idea.
Speech to text to address that mobility issue because of keyboard. Excellent. Any other solutions for Colonel Mustard? Okay. Chat's got one more. Awesome.
Yeah, they started putting them in. Flexible scheduling can help them manage their health needs like physical therapy, another like Dragon, and knowing if he's, just a comment, knowing if he's left or right-handed makes a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. We didn't say whether he's predominantly left or right-handed, and that could really make a difference. Like if he has to be trained in that physical therapy because he was left-handed and now he has to become right-handed. Excellent. Those are all great contributions. All right, so let's move to the next one. Ms. White is a female 28 who uses manual and power wheelchairs to facilitate mobility. She was recently diagnosed with fibromyalgia, resulting in concentration, memory, and processing issues, as well as fatigue and pain. And the image is a 28-year-old Hispanic woman in a white sweater holding, I believe that's a laptop.
Who's got examples?
We have no help for Ms. White. None.
I think our discussions were so in depth on the first two. Maybe we didn't get a chance to spend time because walking around, I heard a lot of great conversation. So I know you guys were talking through these. Oh, she's got one that I'll continue.
And then we'll go to Dax.
To address the wheelchair, she would obviously need a ADA building. It'd have to have ramp, an elevator if her classroom was on the second floor, accessible seating, doors wide enough, all that jazz and good stuff. But for the fibromyalgia, we discussed how she might have trouble concentrating during lectures, and so note-taking accommodations might be good, some skills, but also maybe a recording device, which some professors don't like to allow in their classrooms anymore.
Yes. And I think Dax there, he's got a mic now.
One of the things that dawned on me was somebody brought this up when I was at Adobe Max. Their noise canceling earbuds to help filter out other noise. They're not digital. They have a little disc in them that is bigger or smaller to let more or less noise in, so you can filter out some of those other conversations and other noises.
Right, to help with that processing issue. That's great. Noise canceling headphones. What about reduced a space where there's reduced distraction? You know, maybe if she's working for you, student worker, or this is a coworker, they may need a space where they have nobody sitting on right to left of them. That those are empty cubicles. We work in an open environment at my space, and so for those people who have those processing disorders and need filtering issues, we try to put buffer them and give them a buffer zone. The comment from the virtual is maybe let her work from home. You know, and that is a real possibility. I just read some research that said that the lawsuits about work from home and the decision making where those claims have been denied as ADA accommodations, the tide is turning, and that's becoming more in favor of the employee working from home.
We're getting quite a few comments on from chat, you know, time-based solutions, flexible schedules, that kind of thing.
Time-based solutions and flexible schedules. And we got a comment from this table on the right.
I was just thinking that we've kind of talked like about the ergonomics, but I think with somebody like this, it's more flexible options, like having where it could be a standing desk and then into a seated, because depending on the day, her needs are going to vary. So it's being mindful of like maybe having a plan A and B because of her needs.
That's an excellent observation. Her needs are going to change day to day. So, all right, so let's move on to the next one. Professor Plum is a male, 34. He's photosensitive as part of an epilepsy seizure disorder. He also has a speech impediment of stuttering. So what accommodations do we need to make for Professor Plum, who has a young 30-ish man with horn-rimmed tortoiseshell glasses, a beard and a mustache, and he's wearing a plaid jacket holding a book? If you didn't get to this one, with photosensitivity, particularly in the digital environment, flashing is one of those WCAG standards that a lot of folks, you know, that the flashing can cause seizures if it's strobing, and being aware of video that plays that may have a strobing effect can be problematic for someone. So that's something that you need to be aware of. And we have a comment over here at the right.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with the photosensitivity, we need to consider some kind of light filtering, whether it's shades or some kind of filter on this computer.
Excellent. Light filtering. Yes, a comment in the back on the red. And then we'll go over here to the online.
Also regarding the photosensitivity, you need to address fluorescent lighting. If you're in a lab environment, anything like that, if those ballasts start going out, it starts as an imperceptible flicker to, quote, normal individuals. But for someone with photosensitivity, whether it's through neurodivergence or through a seizure disorder, it triggers much, much faster.
Yes.
So it triggers migraines, triggers seizures, and it becomes a very big deal very quickly.
Okay, go.
Chat has a couple. It said, some type of plan put in place for if a seizure does occur. And also keeping digital signage compliant and having no autoplay on content.
Excellent. Digital science compliance, autoplay. Did you have an additional comment? This table?
Yeah, I was thinking for epilepsy and seizure, therapy dog that will alert him when one is coming on so that he can take precautions.
That's a good one. Therapy dog that might alert. Excellent. Any suggestions for speech impediment and stuttering? I know for faculty, not requiring a recorded video for someone who has that because they may be uncomfortable recording themselves on video and presenting that to a class, offering an alternative way to submit something, particularly like in a speech class or a limited audience might be good. Yes, here.
I had a coworker with a profound stutter, actually several coworkers with profound stutters. And one of the things that they asked for was increased time, even just for answering questions in an office setting, or if we were having meetings and we were going to have to present some kind of information, giving them a preview of the types of questions that would be asked so that they could have answers prepared ahead of time and practice those answers before coming to the whole group and having to present.
Those are excellent points. That pre-preparation of, if you're going to have a slide deck with questions, let them get that a day or two in advance. I also know that for stuttering, one of the things is if they are in a group meeting situation, reminding folks that they should not be interrupted or corrected, let them finish what they're saying. Awesome. Okay, so Ms. Peacock is a 19-year-old female with cerebral palsy, which makes mobility and grip difficult, and sitting upright and maintaining her posture can be difficult. This is an African-American young woman holding a peacock fan with a peacock background. What accessibility things might we need to consider for her?
Got to. I'll go to Dan first, then I'll go to the back.
I was just going to say maybe a seating suggestion or a seating assessment, some kind of seating that's going to support her. So
some kind of seating that's going to support her and making sure that she has comfortable seating, correct? Sometimes group seating is not always comfy.
Making sure that the door handles are the kind that you can just push down on with your hand instead of having to twist.
Ah, yes.
This is kind of a question, but with the difficulty sitting upright, and if she's able to adjust, can we adjust her screens if she's using monitors and stuff like that, that they can also move with her vision?
Right. The tilt on the screen can move so that her vision can be
even just lift up higher.
That's a great point. She might also benefit from the suggestion they made about the standing and seated desk. A desk that changes levels could be beneficial. Chat.
Chat recommends like an adaptive mouse and JAWS or another screen reader for computers.
Adaptive mouse, and that's the first time I've heard really the specific use of a screen reader, but yes.
Also, when it comes to her grip difficulties, maybe having some low-tech options, so an adaptive gripper for pencils or pens or whatever she's going to use, or even utensils.
Excellent. Adaptive gripper. And a mouse might be difficult for her to use. She may need an adaptive mouse as well.
And this kind of goes for any disability. I would just say for her specifically, because there is probably going to be a lot of pain experience throughout the day. So maybe like a task analysis tool, just kind of seeing those tasks being checked off on that list really motivates an individual to keep on going. Also, safety plan in the workplace for her to evacuate if there were to be any reason to evacuate. That would be nice.
Excellent. Those are great additions. And I love the fact that you mentioned the checklist for anybody. That's valuable for anyone. All right. Mr. Green is a male, 28. He was diagnosed with lupus and he often experiences photosensitivity, seizures, and impaired vision. Mr. Green is an African-American man with a goatee, and he is wearing a white lab coat and holding 2 test tubes, one of which is red and one of which is blue.
And this one was exciting for me because I have lupus, so I know about this one. And we said that Mr. Green specifically needs videos and web resources without flashing elements and content that allows for easy zoom features because he has impaired vision and experiences seizures. And I would also add to this some kind of flexible scheduling options because people with lupus have lots of doctor's appointments, as do other conditions.
I was just going to say he's going to need a visual assessment for what really is going to work for him. I know everybody keeps throwing screen readers out there, but not everybody uses screen readers. He might just need screen magnification, maybe video magnifier to be able to see printed materials.
Excellent. Yeah, that is an excellent point. Not everyone uses a screen reader. Some folks like magnification. I have a visually impaired student I work with who magnifies up to 30 times, and he prefers that. 30 times. He really zooms in. It's like 1 letter at a time.
Yeah, that mirrors what someone on chat said as well. Zoom text with maybe a dark background would work for him.
I think part 2 is if they're new to the disability, they may need more training component and a learning curve from visually seeing something to hearing. It's a different game. And or if they've had, you know, a bunch of experience, and they already know I've tried this and this doesn't work, type thing to keep in mind.
Excellent point. It depends. You know, you do need training to use those tools. I know that my faculty sometimes assume that the student knows how to use a screen reader tool or knows how to use another tool, and because it was provided to them, and the student's like, I didn't use this prior. I have no idea how to operate JAWS, or I didn't use JAWS. I used NVDA. So that can make a difference as well. Excellent point. All right, so last one is Miss Scarlett. She's a female 36. She developed Lyme disease due to a tick bite that she got as a teenager. She experiences intermittent and chronic pain, arthritis, chronic fatigue, Bell's palsy, and vision issues. And Ms. Scarlett is a red-headed woman holding a red gemstone, probably a ruby, wearing a red shirt.
I'm going to speak on this one because my daughter also developed Lyme disease from a tick bite, and she was a hairstylist. So, you know, gripping things for a long time. So like Megan mentioned before, any kind of tools that help them, you know, alter their grip, more comfortable grip. Also, a job situation where she can sit sometimes or she can stand sometimes, because standing for a long time can cause pain. Also, sitting for a long period of time can cause pain. So a flexible work environment where she can sit or stand.
We have one in the back on the right.
We said computer access accommodations like a trackball, things that would make it easier if she's having pain issues, lifting restrictions because she may not be able to lift above a certain weight, and accommodations for vision impairment, such as maybe additional time, things to enlarge text, recorded lectures, things of that nature.
And she may need additional time due to the chronic fatigue, taking breaks, chunking things that are set, like exams and that sort of thing. Excellent. Okay. So here are some caveats. Lindsay's going to come back up and join us. You guys did a great job. Give yourselves a round of applause. You did a great job on that. Some caveats when using personas. Personas without real data can become misleading fictionalizations. Again, you need to go to your stakeholders and get the data on what they actually need. The exercise we did today, we curated from the Job Access Network and used those symptoms as part of those descriptions, like those are symptoms of individuals who have Lyme disease, have developed Lyme disease. Those are not actual individuals that I work with, but you want real data. You don't want to just generally use a made up character that potentially isn't based in reality for your organization, because you don't want to be creating something that's just, fantasy, like Harry Potter. Let's not design for Harry Potter. Personas can give the illusion of complete understanding. So remembering that it's my example of this is my own 3 children. When you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. My own 3 children were generated from the same set of biological parents. My husband and I are still married. And all 3 of my children manifested on the spectrum in different ways. Their pediatrician would laugh every time she looked at them because she's like, I know they came from the same set of parents, but the autism looks very different in all 3 of them. They all have different and unique needs as a result of that. So being aware that just because you're thinking about someone who has low vision, or just because you're thinking about someone who's hard of hearing, doesn't mean that you have thought about every person who's hard of hearing and every need that they have. Again, you want to go back to your data. Lindsay, you want to take the third one?
Yes. Okay. Sorry. I was reading my notes on the next slide. So personas can give a false sense of security. So like she just mentioned, when you've met one of her children, you've met one of her children. So we can't put this up as I have done everything that I have done everything that I can in order to prepare for everyone. And we kind of talk about that on the next slide. We do the best that we can to prepare, and we need to make sure that we understand that our needs are going to change. Our students' needs are going to change.
And personas can be relied upon instead of using real research? No. Like, we want the hard data. We want the real research. Personas are just a tool to guide you. They are not the end all be all, and they should not be used in that way. They, again, and that number 4 kind of leads into number 5, simplified stereotypes can fail to reflect your stakeholder diversity. Again, that sort of reiterates that point we keep coming back to. You can plan for what you can plan for, but you can't plan for everything, and you cannot plan for everyone. But by at least planning for some, even if I have a few of the issues and I come to you and I say, but I have this issue and you're not prepared for this, I've shown you that I'm at least trying to meet you where you are, and I'm ready, willing, and able to listen, as opposed to not being prepared at all. This number 6 speaks to something that I talked about earlier. Personas can quickly become outdated and may be expensive to maintain, which is why you should not make cardboard cutouts of your personas. Again, they should grow, they should change, they should reflect your changes in your organization, in your institution, in your stakeholder population. Think of them as graduating and matriculating. They should age and move on. And maybe they've outgrown you and your organization. Maybe it's time for them to move on and you to find a new reflection. And remember that number 7, personas may not include qualitative research data. You may not be able to get all the data that you need. You may need to follow up and get additional information. You're using those. Remember when we had you talking about the steps, we're talking about making large groups. And when you make those large groups and you group people together, you might be missing important specific data that is important to that person. So always be coming back to that touchstone of checking in with that individual.
Did you want me to take it? Mm-hmm. Okay. So going back to our original question of why do we create personas? And we just really wanted you to see in this process how we can help humanize accessibility, especially in our case, in the course design process. So we're able to take this and assist faculty members in moving from viewing the accessibility accommodations as extra work and laying a foundation for all students that might end up in their class in any given semester. So like we've said, this is just the beginning. And we hope that it's something that you can take and help lay a strong foundation with in increasing accessibility institution-wide or organization-wide. We did include the research that we used for this presentation. Those are hyperlinked in the presentation. There are some additional research videos and resources for you should you need to go back and make the argument to use personas in your organization or institution. I know for me, coming from higher ed, that's always well, where is the data? Where does the research say that we should do this? So we've given you some of those things to start with. And we just wanted to open it up to any questions from the floor in room or in chat for anything that we haven't touched upon.
We do have a quick question in chat. They're asking, how many different personas do you think you've created overall?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, initially when we made this presentation, we made 6 personas that were represented by various Star Wars characters. And then we have these clue characters. And then I have 4 or 5 that I use at my office that I have on sticky notes that remind me of individuals that I've touched through the Voices of Accessibility project, of things that I know that my institution specifically needs to address. And I just keep them on sticky notes up by my computer so that I'm reminded of those individuals as I'm doing things. But Lindsay, what about you?
Yeah, same thing. Like the personas that I particularly refer to when I'm thinking about the design decisions that I'm making they're founded on students that I really have interacted with in my time, even in K-12 and higher ed. So as you start to use these and develop personas, you're going to start drawing from your personal experiences, and really it's like becoming, a champion for the people that you have seen not get what they need every day.
I have a question over in the right. Peyton's running up there.
I put on my running shoes today.
I just wanted to say I really appreciated the fact that you pointed out that the personas aren't going to be the same for each individual, even if it's an individual that has the exact identical disabilities, their personas could be different, and we have to consider personal choice, the person's experience, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, and assessing the individual and not just the disability, and finding out what works best for that individual with that disability, and not just lumping all disabilities in together. This is going to work for this person because they're blind or visually impaired. This is going to work for this person because they have mobility issues. So I appreciate that.
That's absolutely. Go ahead. Let's say absolutely. We should not make design decisions without actually speaking to our students. So and I always tell faculty that when you get a letter that's telling you what a student needs, you still need to talk to the student. Don't assume things based on the piece of paper that you got from the student accessibility office. Talk to the student and let them share with you what they need and what helps them.
And I will say, to add to your point, I agree. And yes, we firmly believe in talking to the student and dealing with each individual individually. This is a great starting point. If you're looking for possibilities to offer, if someone's like, I have no idea how to address this, you can say, well, here are some suggestions. Talk to the student and ask, does this work for you? Would this work for you? Would this work for you with modifications? And it can open up the conversation and be a starting point for that. If someone they're just like, I have no idea what to do. I don't even know how to address this, or I've never met a person who has this, that, or the other. And I love the fact that you mentioned that your daughter has Lyme disease, and that these are specific needs that she has. And I love that you mentioned that you have lupus and that it connected for you, because there are those things that we don't see and that we don't know. So again, if you take one thing away, it's always go back and ask, have those conversations, but sometimes this can serve as a starting point for folks.
We have another question in chat. How many people do you usually have involved in the persona creation?
Oh, that's a good one. So when we started this, initially when Lindsay and I were developing our campus accessibility roadmap, it was the two of us, and we were using those students those personal experiences that we had encountered. At TCC, part of our campus accessibility roadmap has been to develop a stakeholder panel. Because I am a firm believer, I sort of introduced the concept to our leadership that nothing about them without them. That was new for them. It was not new to me. So we have a stakeholder panel. And so one of the charges of the stakeholder panel is to help us evaluate our personas, help us develop personas, help us tweak personas, in addition to giving feedback on our progress toward our goals and helping us set goals and adjust goals. Because just because I've identified a need doesn't mean that it should be the priority need for our stakeholder population. I may be completely missing something because I don't have that data. Any other questions?
You must have answered them all.
I guess so.
All right. So let's give Lindsay Foster and Lindsay Morris a big round of applause.